It was an awful feeling to realize when I found this out that the man whom I had thought cared about what happened to me didn't give a damn. I was a fly, just a fly.
Imagine seeking treatment for depression, then instead of being helped, you're put into an experiment where they put you to sleep into a coma with drugs, give you electroshock every day, inject you with LSD, to the point when you wake up from your coma, you can't remember who you are, why you're there, what happened, you don't remember your name, you forget how to walk. This is what happened to the patients of the Allen Memorial Institute. And what's even worse was this was funded by the CIA for Project MKUltra, where they were trying to come up with brainwashing techniques. And to this day, the Canadian government and the American government don't claim responsibility for this, haven't apologized, and try to pretend it never happened.
I was tired, I was depressed, my back was hurting. And so he said to the children's father, why don't you go to Montreal and visit this Dr. Ewan Cameron, this famous man who has all of these accolades, and have an assessment. So we went. My medical file even says that I took my guitar with me. And that was the end of my life. Within 3 weeks, Dr. Cameron decided to call me an acute schizophrenic and ship me up to the sleep room.
How long did they put you to sleep for?
I was in a coma for 86 days.
86 days of unbroken sleep.
Yeah. Total comatose state.
So yeah, this story makes me mad, very frustrated. It's one of the worst stories of the treatment of patients I've ever seen. And there's just a huge, extreme conflict of interest where you are an institute trying to give treatment, but you're being funded by the CIA, being funded by a program that's for the purpose of brainwashing. So what are you doing? Are you trying to help people, or are you trying to get information for the CIA through experiments? And it seems like now, looking at what happened, it was mostly just for experiments and information, not for treatment. The Allen Memorial Institute is in Montreal and is part of McGill University. And where these experiments happened were in the 1950s and the 1960s, mostly the late 50s and the early 60s. This program was run by a doctor named Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, who's a fucking shitbag.
Dr. Elliot Emanuel knew Cameron.
He was an authoritarian, ruthless, power-hungry, nervous, tense, angry man. Not very nice.
But I never saw him once in all the times that I saw him that I wasn't afraid. Every time I went down to his office, I would shake with fear. And every time I'd see him coming down the hall, I'd shake with fear.
Now, Dr. Cameron was a very highly regarded psychiatrist. He was actually at one point the head of the World Psychiatric Association. Many people at the time thought that he was at the head of the field, but looking back at some of the dumb shit he said, he thought that mental illness could be contagious and would argue for this, which is just dumb as shit. Either way, he was highly respected. He came up with these theories, which he called de-patterning of the brain and psychic driving. So his concept was he wanted to wipe people's brains clean and then put messages into their head through tapes that played over and over again the same message. The CIA at the time was doing Project MKUltra, which they were interested in brainwash and possible ways of brainwashing people. They heard about this de-patterning program and thought this could be something useful to their program, so they helped fund this program with Dr. Cameron. Now, the patients were never informed that they were in a program that was funded by the CIA, or that experiments were actually being taken place. They were told they were getting treatment, and that's it. They also didn't go into details about what the treatment was, what the drugs they were taking, what was going to happen. When the program first started, they would strap a sort of helmet to your head that would have speakers playing messages all day. At some point, they realized the patients did not like this, so they thought, okay, here's a great idea. Let's put them into a coma instead, so then they can't complain. That's what they would do. They would put the patients in comas.
I was there for a while, and I thought, I don't want to stay here, and I started to run away from the hospital, and they grabbed me, and then they put me on sleep treatment. And they kept you asleep for 23 days. And while I was asleep, they were shocking the heck out of me with electric shocks and playing tapes.
While they were in comas, they would give electroshock therapy, also known as ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, and they would do it multiple times a day at higher dosages than any other time. Like, this is unprecedented levels of ECT. Now, it is worth saying that ECT is a treatment that's used today, and it can be helpful for some people, but the way they were applying it was not the same way we apply it today. Now, it's like once a month maybe, and the effects last for a month, and it's not at high voltages and high dosages. So what they were doing was unprecedented, and it was unprecedented because it was an experiment. The goal with the ECT was to wipe their brain clean. Also, they were giving them LSD every other day or multiple times. I don't know why, just to see what would happen, I guess. This was also part of MKUltra. They would give LSD to patients and see if this could brainwash people.
I had LSD, I believe, a total of 14 times. And sometimes there would be 4 days between the injections, and sometimes there would be one consecutive day after the other.
Once the patients were brought out of the comas, a lot of them were described as being childlike. They had forgotten who they were, what their name was, how to do basic things, how to write, how to read. And this was considered a success for them.
I had to be toilet trained. I was a vegetable. I had no identity, I had no memory, I'd never existed in the world before. Like a baby, just like a baby that has to be toilet trained.
And while they were in the coma, they would have speakers playing these messages over and over again in their ears, trying to psychic drive these new messages into their brain, trying to fix their brain.
With psychic driving, with the driving tapes under his pillow, and they told him he was going to go home, and he'd just come out of sleep therapy, and he just jumped. He went around, big smile on his face, said goodbye to everybody, went up on the roof and jumped off and landed at the back door of the Atlan, which was a dreadful, awful thing. I don't think he was more than 30. And he was just gone. Just gone.
I was aware of the speaker under my pillow. I was aware of the words.
Which were?
You killed your mother.
You killed your mother.
Yeah.
Who was alive and well.
Who was alive and well. And
over and over again, this voice is done.
Well, like I say, it takes about 2 seconds to say that message. And this was going on for 23 days.
After these experiments had been done on these patients, a lot of them were never the same ever again. Most of them had forgotten who they were, what their name was, and had lost big chunks of their childhood, their time in high school. They didn't remember anything. For many of them, it took them many years to recover from this. Like I said, a lot of them were never the same again. 9 of the former patients went on to sue the CIA, and they agreed to a settlement where they were given $90,000 each. The CIA did not take fault in that settlement. Similarly, the government of Canada was sued, and they also gave a settlement of $100,000 to 50 of the patients. But in the settlement, it was said, "We are not responsible for what happened. This is not an admission of guilt." To this day, the government has not taken responsibility or apologized, which is fucking terrible. They'll give money, but then they'll say, well, we're not responsible. We're just doing this out of our good faith, which is bullshit. Because they were funding the program more than the CIA was funding the program.
You decided to take on the government of Canada.
Sure. Well, hey, considering what I'd already been through, that was a snap. What else? Why not?
It must have become obvious to you fairly quickly that you were ramming your head into a brick wall.
Yes. I'm stubborn, too. It got to the point where every time, whether it was John Crosby or Raina Titian or then the Honorable Kim Campbell, it got to be, you guys, we're gonna stay alive. And I said that to Brian Mulrooney, too. If you think I'm going away, you've got another thing coming. I'm not going to go away.
Linda is just honestly the best. Take on the government with no fear. What a legend. There's still people getting settlements. One happened in 2017, but the person was given a gag order so they could not talk about it. And this was obviously done, so this story keeps under the rug so it doesn't blow up and more people come for money or more people criticize the government. This story pisses me off. I think the government should at the very least apologize. I mean, the very, very least. And yeah, it's just a sad story about the treatment of people who had psychiatric problems.
I am who I am today My family tells me that I am very much like the Linda that they knew when I was growing up. Gregarious, always talking, laughing, singing, happy, positive person. I have no memory of that person. All I'm grateful for is that Cameron might have been able to wipe a memory, but he couldn't wipe a spirit.